I am Vanessa Whitfield, 32, a financial advisor who worked hard for my gold credit card and its generous limit. When my mother called about my father needing urgent medical treatment, I handed it over despite a twinge of doubt. Days later, I scrolled through Instagram and froze. There was my sister Jessica, lounging on a beach in Fiji. When I confronted her, she smiled casually. "Thanks for the credit card, but don't worry, I only used $75,000. I laughed and replied, "My personal card only has a limit of $80. Did you even check the name on it?" Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from. Like and subscribe if you've ever had family take advantage of your generosity. You'll want to see how this ends. Growing up in Ashford Hills, our family dynamics were set early. My father, Gerald, a structural engineer, was the supportive parent, always encouraging my independence. "Vanessa, education is the one thing no one can ever take from you," he'd say. The one piece of financial advice in our house that never came with hidden interest rates. My mother, Eleanor, was different. She claimed to love us equally, but Jessica, 4 years younger, was the center of her universe. Jessica got the prettier clothes, the newer toys, and always the benefit of the doubt. "You've always been so independent and strong," Mom would tell me whenever I pointed out the unfairness, a compliment that always seemed to end with me giving something up. By 16, I'd accepted my role as the responsible one. While Jessica got a car for her 16th birthday, I was told college funds were tight. I graduated valedictorian, earned a partial scholarship to Ashford State, and covered the rest through loans and a part-time bank job. My first real economics class, since compound interest is a merciless teacher that doesn't play favorites. Those years were grueling. Classes, shifts, studying till midnight. Jessica, meanwhile, drifted through community college, dropping classes whenever they got stressful. "College isn't for everyone," Mom always said in her defense. My finance degree opened doors. Starting as an analyst at Sterling and Hayes Financial Group, I climbed steadily through sheer grind. By 28, my loans were paid off and I'd made senior advisor. I moved into my own condo. Financial independence felt like breathing freely for the first time. Dad was proud. "You did this all on your own, Nessie." Mom seemed threatened instead. "Must be nice to only worry about yourself." Jessica, now 28, bounced between retail jobs, still living at home, posting a lifestyle her paycheck couldn't possibly fund. Classic lifestyle inflation with no income statement to back it up. 3 years ago, Jessica needed $4,500 to avoid eviction. Paid skeptically. It was never repaid, and mentioning it made me obsessed with money. When Dad's heart condition was diagnosed 2 years ago, he retired early and their income dropped. I covered small expenses and drove him to appointments every Sunday. Jessica claimed she got too emotional to help. "Your sister shows her love in different ways," Mom said. A love language, apparently, that skipped hospital waiting rooms entirely. Over the past year, Mom's requests grew. Property taxes, a water heater, roof repairs. I paid every time, though nothing about their spending ever changed. My promotion to director came with a corporate gold card, nearly identical to my personal one, and enough income to finally put a down payment on a house. My family knew about the promotion but not the details. I'd learned to keep specifics private. I never imagined how far they'd go to exploit it. The call came on a Tuesday during our strategy meeting. "Vanessa, thank God," Mom said, panicked. "Your father collapsed. We're at Ashford General. He needs an emergency cardiac procedure. Insurance calls it experimental. We need $28,000 by tomorrow or they can't schedule it." "What exactly did the doctor say?" "There's no time for questions, Vanessa. He could have another episode any moment." I left immediately. My supervisor, Bradley Coleman, told me to take whatever time I needed. At the hospital, Dad was sitting up, pale but alert. Nessie, you didn't need to rush." Mom cut in. "Don't downplay this, Gerald." Jessica, scrolling her phone in the corner, added, "It's super serious, Vanessa." Dad seemed genuinely unaware of the urgency Mom described. When I pushed for details, Mom got defensive, produced a folder of vague paperwork, and insisted the office was closed and payment was due by morning. I asked to speak to the doctor directly. By then it could be too late, Mom snapped. Your sister would help if she could, but she barely supports herself. I glanced at Jessica's designer handbag and fresh manicure and said nothing. I can cover the treatment, I finally said, but I want to meet this specialist myself. Relief flooded Mom's face. I pulled out my wallet, saw both nearly identical gold cards side by side, and handed over what I believed was my personal one. Use it only for medical expenses. I'll need receipts. Jessica suddenly needed the restroom, following Mom out to make arrangements. Alone with Dad, he seemed confused about the treatment plan, saying only that Mom was handling everything. Before leaving, I texted Mom, "Remember, only for Dad's treatment." She replied instantly, "Of course, dear. Thank you for being our rock." Driving back to work, a voice in my head questioned the decision. But family obligation ran deep, and I silenced my doubts, a decision that would come back to bite me harder than any market correction ever had. The days that followed brought vague updates. Doctor reviewing options, father resting well. My questions about the specialist went unanswered. Dad's calls went to voicemail more than usual, and when I reached him, he seemed confused, saying Mom was handling everything. Work consumed my attention. A major client restructuring needed my focus, so family concerns slid to the back burner. The following Monday mid-lunch presentation, I scrolled Instagram to clear my head. A photo from Wendy, a mutual friend, showed 5 women toasting cocktails on a beach, captioned, "Missing island life already." Among them, unmistakably Jessica, posted that very morning. More photos followed. Helicopter tours, a luxury resort, a designer handbag worth over $1,800 captioned, "Sometimes you just need to treat yourself." A cold feeling crept in. My personal accounts showed nothing unusual. Then I remembered the card I'd given Mom. I logged in and froze. Flights to Fiji, the Coral Palms Resort, spa treatments, shopping. Over $82,000 in 5 days. First-class flights for 5, a presidential suite, champagne dinners. Called Dad voicemail. I texted urgently. Mom's reply was vague. "He's resting." Doctor appointments went well. I pressed for specifics, she deflected. I called Ashford General directly. The nurse confirmed. No procedure scheduled, no admission, next appointment a month out. The confirmation hit like a blow. I asked my colleague Natalie to cover my afternoon, then checked my wallet. My corporate Sterling and Hayes card, with a $220,000 limit, was missing. Not just fraud against me. Corporate fraud. I reported it to the credit card company immediately, then drove to my parents' house, cycling through betrayal, rage, and a strange clarity. Jessica's car was in the driveway. She sat glowing with a fresh tan, unfazed. "Vanessa, what a surprise. I was just going to call you. How was Fiji?" Yes. Her practiced innocence crumbled fast once I mentioned the resort, the handbag, the helicopter tours. "Fine. Mom helped me." "With what money?" "With the money for Dad's treatment. We didn't even use the whole $75,000. Her casual admission stunned me. Zero remorse, total entitlement. "So there was never any emergency," I said flatly. She shrugged. "Dad needs it eventually. Mom figured you'd never help with my trip if we just asked." "It's not like you can't afford it," she added. "Would it kill you to share your success?" Mom walked in, freezing at the sight of me. I laid it out. The lie, the $82,000, the vacation. She denied, deflected, blamed a scheduling conflict. "I called the hospital, Mom. There's no procedure." "Stop lying." Jessica cut in, annoyed. "It's not like I maxed out your card. Your limit's way higher." "For a week in Fiji," I said, while lying about our father's health. Dad walked in, looking nothing like a man near death. Shock crossed his face as I explained everything. "What credit card? Eleanor, what is she talking about?" Mom crumbled. I might have exaggerated the urgency a little. I showed Dad the statement. He sank into a chair. Eleanor, have you lost your mind? Jessica insisted it was my card since it had my name on it. I corrected her. It was my corporate card, nearly identical to my personal one, kept in a separate wallet slot for exactly this reason. She read the company name aloud, uncertainty finally crossing her face. You used the wrong card, Mom whispered. No, I said. I gave you the right one. You took the wrong one from my wallet. Every charge is corporate fraud. How were we supposed to know? Jessica protested. One clearly says Sterling and Hayes, I said. And regardless, you had no right to use either card for a vacation after lying about Dad's health. Dad, furious, demanded apologies and repayment. Jessica snapped that they didn't have $82,000. Then you should have thought of that before spending it, Dad said. The family dynamic cracked wide open before my eyes. Years of favoritism and enabling laid bare in one brutal moment. I left, promising Dad a real cardiac consultation, because unlike some people in this family, I actually care about your health. In my car, I let myself cry for 5 minutes. Anger, betrayal, and strange relief. Then called my supervisor to loop in finance and legal. Our CFO, Patricia Lowell, listened to the full account calmly. The charges are clearly fraudulent, she said. We can pursue criminal charges, or handle it privately with a structured settlement. I left with a plan. Document everything, consult a lawyer, and limit contact with my family. My lawyer friend, Priscilla Hart, was blunt over lunch. Corporate fraud could mean real jail time, especially for Jessica as the one who used the card, though partial repayment in good faith might avoid criminal charges. What would you do? I asked. Let it play out, she said. Sometimes consequences are the only real teacher. The calls came fast once investigators contacted Jessica and Mom directly. Jessica threatened never to forgive me. I told her to consult a lawyer. Mom sobbed that it was a mistake, insisting I couldn't press charges against family. I'm not pressing charges, I reminded her. I'm reporting fraud, which I'm legally required to do. Meanwhile, I got Dad a real cardiac consultation. The actual procedure would cost $18,000, mostly insurance covered. A stark contrast to Mom's fabricated $28,000 emergency. And a good reminder that a second opinion is often the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy. Over coffee, Dad admitted his own failure. I enabled your mother's favoritism because it was easier than fighting it. I let Jessica become entitled. And I let you become the family scapegoat because you were strong enough to handle it. 3 weeks later, the company's decision landed. Jessica would face charges as primary user, reducible with repayment. Mom risked being named an accessory. Jessica sold her car and possessions to scrape together $18,000. Mom liquidated jewelry and savings for $12,000. The company agreed to a settlement. The rest repaid over time, plus 400 hours of community service for Jessica, with suspended charges hanging over any missed payment. The humiliation finally cracked Jessica's entitlement. Dad moved into his own apartment to reevaluate his marriage. Mom started therapy. Jessica took a second job. I bought my house. Smaller down payment than planned, but entirely my own. 6 weeks later, Mom and Jessica showed up on my porch, disheveled, asking for a small loan to cover a missed settlement payment before it triggered Jessica's suspended charges. This is exactly the pattern that got us here, I said. No, Dad arrived mid-conversation, and for the first time in his life took my side outright. I've been enabling both of you for decades. Vanessa was right all along. Mom accused him of letting his own daughter go to jail. If that's what it takes for her to understand consequences, then yes, he said firmly, though he also thanked me genuinely for still arranging his real cardiac procedure despite everything. That evening cracked something open. Dad admitted his marriage was ending for good. Jessica, finally defenseless, cried, I don't want to be this person anymore. Then change, I told her. Not with promises, with consistent action. We set new boundaries that night. No more bailouts ever, though Dad offered Jessica help finding steady work through his own connections, conditional on real change. In the months after, transformation took hold. Dad's procedure succeeded. He began volunteering, teaching financial literacy to seniors, passing on, quite literally, the lessons our family had learned the hard way. Mom sold the family home, moved to a small condo, and worked through therapy unevenly. Jessica sold her luxury items, took a steady office job through Dad's connections, and slowly rebuilt her online presence around honesty instead of image. Socially, the fallout was real. Mom's bridge friends drifted away once her status dropped. Jessica's Fiji friends vanished once the free trips stopped. I leaned on colleagues like Natalie for support and began quietly channeling the experience into my work, offering financial counseling for clients navigating messy family money dynamics. My own story, without the details, resonating deeply. 6 months after the confrontation, we gathered for a stiff but civil dinner marking Dad's recovery. As we left, Jessica pulled me aside. "I'm actually grateful this happened. I didn't like who I was becoming. Not a Hollywood ending, just one honest moment, and for now that was enough." A year after discovering the Fiji trip, I hosted a housewarming in my own backyard. Dad arrived early, healthier than he'd been in years. His volunteer work thriving. "Beautiful place, Nessie," he said. We both understood the unspoken cost behind it. He mentioned Mom was doing better in therapy, maybe volunteering at a shelter. "Growth comes in unexpected ways," he said. "The Eleanor I married would never have considered that." Jessica arrived last, transformed. Simple clothes, natural hair, community service hours, now genuine volunteer work with a youth financial literacy program. She handed me a small plant from her community garden. Modest, thoughtful. Exactly where our relationship stood now. Not close, but honestly rebuilding. Later, on the porch with Natalie, she asked if I'd truly processed everything. "Both, I think," I said. "The betrayal still hurts, but watching them finally face reality is strangely healing." Asked about forgiveness, I admitted I was working on it. Not the version where everything resets, but the real kind, where you acknowledge the harm and choose not to let it control your future. Legally, it had resolved as well as it could. Jessica's suspended charges remained suspended, contingent on compliance. Mom's settlement was fulfilled through sold assets and steady payments. Professionally, my transparency had earned respect rather than damage. 6 months in, I was promoted to regional director. My new salary, ironically, could have covered the entire fraud outright. But the money had never been the point. My friendship with Dad deepened into something equal and easy. He began dating a fellow literacy volunteer named Diane, bringing out a lightness I'd rarely seen in him. My contact with Mom stayed limited but civil, boundaries firmly in place. Jessica and I built a new, quieter kind of sisterhood. She enrolled in community college for business administration, a small, quiet joke between us. The girl who once couldn't manage a shopping bag now learning to manage a ledger. Within myself, the change ran deepest. The people-pleasing, the reflexive responsibility for everyone else's choices, had faded. I said no without guilt and yes without resentment. My relationship with a thoughtful architect named Thomas grew healthier by the month. And my professional confidence had never been stronger. I learned that family healing has no neat arc. No single moment when everything is fully restored. Just the slow, ongoing work of boundaries and cautious reconnection. As the sun set on my backyard that evening, I felt something like peace. The betrayal had been the correction that finally broke patterns generations deep. And in forcing us all to face reality, it had made room for something healthier to grow. The financial advisor in me couldn't resist the metaphor. Sometimes the greatest returns come only after a painful correction. True wealth, I'd learned, isn't measured in credit limits. It's measured in self-respect, in relationships built on trust, and in the courage to hold your ground even when looking away would be easier. Healing starts small. The choice to set a boundary, to require accountability, to value truth over comfortable illusions. And, ultimately, to define family for yourself on terms of respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to make hard decisions about family and money? Tell me in the comments. And if this story resonated, like and subscribe. Thanks for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries are the ones that bring the most peace. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.